everybody. My name is Angie McPherson, and I'm a digital producer for Global Moms Challenge. And I'm joined today by Aaron Sherinian. Aaron, thank you so much for joining us
Thank
today.
you.
The reason that we wanted to get everybody together is just so we can talk about some of the exciting opportunities that are coming up in September and how you guys can get involved. So feel free to ask questions as we go along through the interview, and we'll go ahead and try to answer them as best we can. So Aaron, thank you so much for joining us. And I know September is right around the corner. United Nations Foundation has so many wonderful things coming up ahead. Can you tell us a little bit about the United Nations General Assembly Week and what's going on, and why this week is relevant to families in the U.S. and around the world?
You got it. Can I start by giving a shout out of love to the Global Moms community? I love this community. This community has taught us to listen as much as we talk, and that is where I think global progress really happens. So we love what we learn from the Global Moms community and all of the interactions that we have. And that gets to, I think, your question about why September. Why does it matter to my family around the dinner table, my family around the community table, my family around the legislative table? Because September is the time when the world comes together and when everyone sends their elected representatives or their national representatives to talk about the world's most pressing challenges at the UN General Assembly. And for many years, people thought, wait a minute, that's a moment, that's something for a select group of maybe elite individuals. The reality is that the UN has asked for everyone to participate. The UN has said, this is your world, you've got a role, and we live in a world where we can't afford anything less than that. We live in a world where the problems are big, everyone is opening up their news feeds and reading about things that may seem far away geographically but hit home locally, and I know we'll talk about that, I hope, later. But I think the really important thing to realize is that UN General Assembly Week coincides with what we know will be Global Goals Week, and we'll hear more about that coming up. I don't want to scoop it too much, but I know that's coming up, which coincides with Climate Week, which is so important right now as people talk about climate change. UN General Assembly Week is a moment where you're going to have the Social Good Summit, we'll talk about that, I hope, but also the Global Citizen Festival, where companies and brands, organizations, activists, they all come around to say, here's where we stand, here's what we've got to get done, and here's what you can do.
And those seem like broader concepts. So as an individual who's at home and possibly like listening to our conversation now, like how can they specifically get involved themselves and pay attention to General Assembly?
So right now people are, in my community, people are sending their kids off to school for back to school. We don't go back for a couple of weeks. So we've got maybe just a week. So we've got a little bit of time to think about it. But I think that this season, at least for a lot of the people in the US, is a good time to do a reset, right? Like we reset with our kids. What are our goals? What are we going to try to, new school year, fresh binder, whatever it is. It's a chance to do a reset. So why not have those conversations in our families about what are the world's goals? And I'm not saying that the world goes back to school. It doesn't. Because, school is different and schedules change, et cetera. But we need that reset when we're talking about where do we stand on the refugee issue, which is urgent. Where do we stand on hunger, poverty? Where do we stand on conflict and justice? So it's a good opportunity, I think, to do a couple of things. First and foremost, talk to your families. There's a couple of ways to do that. Secondly, follow along, because your news feed is only as smart as you engage with it and make it. So we're on the Facebook platform right now. As you engage on Facebook on global issues, it is going to feed you stuff that you want and need on it. That's not an algorithm for anything other than making you smarter and more engaged. So let the algorithm tell you because you're engaging with it. So I say to people, start engaging with content by sharing it out with people. Did you know? This Global Moms Challenge content you could easily share and say, did you know that this is what's happening with Zika? Do you know that this is what is happening with childbirth around the world? Did you know that this is what vaccines are able to do when people have access to them around the world? The more you share that content in advance of the Social Good Summit, which kicks off on the 18th, UN General Assembly Week, which happens during that entire week, a week where we're talking about solutions and climate, the more you engage with that content now, the more you can say to people, you have a role.
Do you have an example of very specific accounts that people could follow to best follow the UN General Assembly Week?
100%. So there's a couple of, we're sitting on one of them. So Global Moms Challenge is going to be at the heart of those conversations right now, saying to people, here's something that impacts you whether or not you realize it, and it definitely is impacting a mother and children and families around the world right now. These are not theoreticals. This is what it's like to raise a family in this part of the world, and this is what they need, and this is how they're part of it. We're not talking about people, by the way, we're talking with people, and that's an important thing. And that's why I appreciate the Global Moms Challenge community, talking with these moms and families around the world. So that's number one, obviously, a gratuitous plug to all that family that we love. But we want people to be part of, and I'm going to throw out a couple, follow global goals. follow that hashtag. Global goals is significant because the Sustainable Development Goals that every country adopted, they're not someone else's goals, they're your goals. You had a say in making them, I had a say in making them. They went out to the world to do data, to collect data about what was needed and ask people their opinions and then bring them to the table. So follow hashtag global goals, follow the Global Goals account. There's a lot of information on globalgoals.org that I think is really interesting. We at the UN Foundation are going to be helping people, whether it be through our various communities that we're proud to be a part of, the Nothing But Nets community, the Better World campaign, the Girl Up campaign, the Shot at Life community. We're in an exciting month with the Shot at Life community as well as part of Blogist. We're going to be, through all of those channels and handles, we're going to be sharing stories. They're stories that are meant to inspire you. Some stories are going to teach you something that you didn't know, and there's stories that are meant to elicit a response about how people are getting engaged. So I hope people are going to those channels as well. The UN has done a ton to make this information accessible. So I also hope that you'll follow the United Nations, the various accounts that they've got on social right now, and where we'll be looking at that summit week through various lenses.
And there really are a lot of events and different ways to plug in, and I appreciate you bringing up the idea of the global goals, as that's something that I wanted to discuss next. So last year at the United Nations General Assembly Week, something that they did was enact and ratify the new Sustainable Development Goals. So do you mind just quickly explaining what exactly those are and why it's important for everybody to plug in? Because I thought you also brought up a really good point about the fact that it's particularly to us. We can sometimes see these global issues as being very far away, when in fact it's something that's right in front of us, something very concrete that we can take action on. So if you wouldn't mind kind of just explaining what they are.
So the global goals were an effort to bring together, quantify, so that we can measure over the next 15 years how we can achieve global progress in the world in fighting poverty, hunger, improving education, increasing access for girls and women, and promoting their rights. Everything related to infrastructure in cities, to how we're going to make sure that water and sanitation, the climate and the environment, all of these issues, we've got to measure it. We've got to set out a goal, we've got to measure it so that we're keeping everyone accountable. That's what the Sustainable Development Goals or global goals are. And what's exciting about this is it does a couple of things. A, it says to people, well, that's so big, how could we ever fight it or combat it? Well, we've got a plan. And that plan's your plan, it's our plan. It's an important plan because it gives us metrics and benchmarks so that we know when we're falling behind. We've got to fight this, we've got to get there, but we now know and have measurement to see some things that where it's a dashboard for us to see where we're falling behind. And this year, something that I hope I'm not scooping too much on, but I think we're going to see new data visualization and a lot of data. Data is going to be discussed a lot during this September on how we can measure where things are. Where is our progress? We're 1 year in, how far are we? So that's essentially what the Sustainable Development Goals are, but also it's something that affects us because, as you said, they're about everybody.
Right.
This is not about global progress over there. This is about global progress right here. And so we're talking about the health of girls and women and moms in the United States. We're talking about how to make sure that innovation, that creation of jobs is happening in this country. It's happening all around the world. So it's not about anyone's particular problem. It's about all of us focusing on global progress together. That's an important distinction when people read and talk about the global goals. It truly is global.
And I love absolutely all of that feedback and being able to internalize that. Something that I had a question for is how can we take the global goals and bring them into our homes? So what's something that we can do as global families to be able to support the global goals?
So I'm being led into this by some kids that I gotta tell you, they are total global goalistas. And part of it's because this is what I do for my job, and my wife is also a champion for global health. But I gotta tell you, they get it. And I know that the sort of people that are probably listening to this moment right now, this conversation, they probably also have kids who get it, because the kids that are in your house grew up with the internet in their home. They did. They had the internet in their house. The kids in your home have probably had more contact with people living in places around the world than you and I ever dreamed of having when we were growing up. That's amazing for me. I had a pen pal. Who lived in Europe, and I had sometimes the ability to interact with that person. And we now have people who are, they're Snapchatting with people from around the world. They're having the ability to Skype with them immediately. They're on Facebook with people from around the world. Right. This generation has a low tolerance for waiting, and I'm glad for that. So how do you talk to your family when it comes to waiting for progress? I think that's an important thing. They should be impatient. I sometimes wish my kids were more patient with when we are trying to get somewhere on a long trip. But I love that they're not patient when it comes to progress. So how do you get involved? the global goals, the brand of the global goals themselves is a really important thing. I was actually looking for one right now. Actually, I think I have one in, don't have one in front of me. We're gonna get one, I think, right now.
I love that you might have had one in your
I
pocket.
totally have one in my, just to get out of my pocket. So the global goals represent an important list of things that are accessible and that people can go to. We on globalgoals.org right now, we can show you those 17 goals that resonate with people. How to talk about with your family? Put them on your screen in front of your kids. Your iPad can show these to them and they can understand what they are right now. The global goals are taking place in lessons around the world. People are learning about them. They're learning about the reality of what it is to not have access to water in certain places and how you can improve that. So ask for it in your schools. As far as your family goes, and something that I think we need to be cognizant of, is that important organizations and brands are out there and they're looking for ways to make the global goals a part of their brand story. Ask for it as a family. If you're a family that's staying at a hotel, purchasing a product, supporting it, putting your money in a bank or a financial institution, why are you asking those brands what they do for the global goals? Ask them that question, because if they're not giving you the right answer, take your business somewhere else. That's my personal view. But also reward those brands who are telling the story about something that matters to you. Tell them thank you. I want to know that the place where I bank, that the place where I work, that the place where I am doing my business of the day-to-day is a place that understands that we live in this great world. Hey, a moment of live thing is happening, Angie. This is awesome. Thank you. These are the goals. And so with your family, discuss them, talk about them. Family resources are dear. You save up every dollar, every penny. You try to do with them what you can do. Do something smart with them. Reward a company that's doing something smart with them. Ask your government what they're doing. Does your mayor know about the global goals? They should. Does your representative know what the global goals are? Talk to them. Advocate about them. I think that's important.
And I think that's a really good point, that it's not necessarily that you need to invest more money in a specific area, but that you invest your money in places that are also adding to the table and are also involving themselves. And as we're starting to see the global goals become even broader and more people starting to learn about them because the resources are available, you're starting to see more companies that are giving back and that are starting to find ways to plug in. And this is such a great framework for people to be able to learn about those global issues and what the kind of where those metrics are, and find ways of within their own lives plugging in.
Jan, if I may say one thing on those conversations with your family, we're being led by kids who are global citizens, and they're digitally denominated, and we love that about them. At the same time, they're very philanthropic, and there's this whole generation of, I love every conversation about the philanthro-teen. I think that our teenagers are very philanthropic. They're philanthro-teens who not only want to invest and give, but they want to give of their voice. And their social handles are part of their social assets, and they invest those things. So when you talk about the philanthropy that your family is going to be involved in, I hope the families are making that a family decision. Where are we going to volunteer our time? Where are we going to donate money? What are we going to do through our civic group or our church group?
Right.
I hope that those conversations are happening openly, and I hope that they're happening with regard to what are the needs in the world. How can we make an effort, an important dent? A family dent is a really important dent in education, in making sure there's peace and justice around the world, and the oceans and the water. So I mean, I think there's a lot of ways for families to be involved. I hope that you're having the conversation openly. We don't give to get credit, but I hope we're giving in a way that is participatory in our families. Don't give to give credit, but let's give to learn together and to make it impactful.
It's also a good way of setting an example and showing them how they can make that change happen in the world. And actually, something I wanted to bring up about the global goals is we had a good question coming in from our audience members, and one of them was, it was about climate change. So I'm just trying to open up the comments now. But what are some of the things that are going to happen around, do you have any insight into what's going to happen around Climate Week?
Sure do. Glad you asked. So on the 21st of September, we know that there's going to be an important convening around which countries are getting us how far as it relates to our climate change goals. There are a lot of specifics about it. It's an intense and a detailed subject, but I think what people need to know right now is that last year there was an important convening in Paris, COP21, the Conference of Parties, and COP21 was an important climate summit where we said when we come together in September, we need a certain amount of people, a certain amount of countries to come together with a certain degree of specificity, ratifying this agreement so that we can move forward. And we're getting there. We're getting very close. we need to make sure that by September 21, we have the right number of countries coming through saying, we're going to do our part in making sure that we're emitting less in terms of carbon. We're going to do our part in making sure that we're investing in the right ways for a world that's experiencing climate change. I'm excited because the conversation isn't about, let's spend a lot of time and energy on, is this happening? It's about, what are we doing about it? So you're going to see on September 21st, in that big week that takes place, you're going to see the Secretary General of the UN. You're going to see global leaders who are really putting it out there, saying, this is what I can do, and I'm going to do it. And I hope that citizens of the world are thanking them for doing that and saying, you know, my kids and my grandkids and my great-grandkids, I want them to live in a world where climate change is something they're going to be dealing with. We know they're going to be dealing with it, but let's give them the tools to deal with it in the right way. I don't want my great-great-grandkids saying, Angie and Aaron were alive. What were they doing? What were they doing in 2016? This is where we should be. This is what we should be doing to put the world on a path so that we can live here, because this world isn't going to be, you know, what kind of world do you want to live with if it's not here?
Right.
If we as humans can't live in a way where it exists. So I think it's going to be an important moment on the 21st.
And I think you're right. Having been, you know, watching the conversations around COP21 when it happened last year, the narrative is shifting. Instead of just saying, you know, this is happening, pay attention to it. Now people are starting to look for those ways to take action. And so the specific comment that came from Pandora Spelios on Facebook was, how can we tackle climate change issues for our children and future generations? So how can we as individuals be able to help out, to help our family, to make sure that in the future we're going to be able to have a planet that we can be proud of?
So it starts at that local level. All of those consumption questions that happen, and I think for when we're talking about our families, especially if there's children in the house, kids are really good at being your monitor about your consumption and what's happening in terms of your ability to live in a climate-friendly home. Let's be honest, they're better than we are, and they should be. So you start with those consumption questions about your home, right? About the things that you're doing, the choices that you're making. And then at a community level, there's not a school, or there's not a community center or a church or whatever community part you're part of that should be asking that question. It's so great to be in an organization where someone has the courage at a table to say, if we're going to put on this activity, what are we doing to make sure that it's friendly to the environment? Good for them. I mean, I'm talking about every organization should have that person who has the courage to say at the table, what are we doing? And then at a nation level, are you talking to your representative about that? So your family, how powerful is that? If you were a member of Congress in the United States or a member of a parliament around the world, to get a letter from a family saying, I am sending this to you as a voter who votes for you, and together with my family unit. That, believe me, it raises their eyebrows, that gets their attention, and people want to know that families are having that conversation. And at a global level, there are various ways for communities to get involved and to make sure that they're having their voice be heard. Follow Climate Week, if you're not reading articles on Climosphere, you should be. Climosphere is a way to get really insightful information every day about what's happening on climate change, because we're beyond words, it's about action. We've moved from words to action. Last year did that. A very diligent community has been working us there. Those actions are at the home, the community level, the nation level, and then the global level. We all should be doing it. My kids are asking me, is that good for the environment? Every time I hear that, I'm super happy, and then I go to super worried. Maybe my answer's not always right.
Right.
But I'm grateful that they've got it. So let's be the people to ask that. And what I'm doing good for the environment, and is it setting the example that will be good for the environment that they inherit?
Perfect. So I guess the next thing that I wanted to kind of switch gears on a little bit is, can you give an example of how United Nations Foundation as a unit is helping to support the global goals? I wanted to kind of take a step back away from the family. I know that we've been talking about that, and kind of see from your workspace, what are we doing?
So our job at the UN Foundation is to help bring people to this table. There's a lot of room at this table. We believe that the UN is the place with not only the mandate, but the ability to convene those people with the resources and the ideas and the connections to really get to global progress. So our job is to make sure this table is very big, that there's space at it for everyone, that they know how to connect and how to be in the conversation. The global goals are something that we welcome. Part of our job, and you're speaking to me, and my mandate is communications and public relations and marketing for the organization. And we believe that that's an important part of the discussion. It's not, for us, communications is part of the deliverables, because people need to be aware and active. And so building moments and building places, whether you're a top Instagram photographer, whether you're a blogger who's coming from Uganda, whether you're a parent who happens to love the issue about children's health and you're coming from Cincinnati, We believe that we should set the table virtually, so we should be able to have conversations that are available via live stream in foreign languages. We're part of summits like the Social Good Summit where that takes place. We bring people to the United Nations General Assembly Week to introduce them to our friends at the UN and other innovators. We try to build communities that say, hey, you might not have realized it, but because you are definitely pro this, you're definitely having a seat at the UN General Assembly. Let your voice be heard. So our job is to make those channels available to people. I'm proud of the work that happens here because I think that's exciting, but more importantly, I'm inspired by what people are saying, and people are coming to us and saying, hey, how can I help? And there are a lot of people who realize that these problems are very big. There may be idealistic people, but that's not where it ends. They're activists. They're people who want to take action. And I enjoy what we learned from all of that community.
And the Social Good Summit is a big moment that's coming up for the United Nations Foundation, and that's only just a few weeks away. So what are you really excited about for this year?
So we're going to make an announcement today. Keep your Facebook open because we're going to make an announcement later on today, hopefully, about a guest that's going to join us, and we're really excited about it. The Social Good Summit this year is going to tackle that issue about solutions that exist and technology that exists in connecting today for a future tomorrow. We're going to be bringing together people who, in pairings, and I love that term, pairings that might be unexpected that are really exciting. So you're going to hear people who are policy leaders in a country, people who are champions and activists for a cause, together with solutions folks, people who are making solutions happen in a health clinic far away or in a community right next door. So it's that idea about connecting, and through our partners with the UNDP and 92nd Street Y, and of course Mashable, that's what they do. They're so good at bringing together these innovative conversations, and we're excited to see that happen. I would watch out for a couple of things. I'd watch out for a great discussion on data. I think there's going to be a lot of discussion about how to use data. I think you're going to see an exciting conversation about how climate fits into just what you said, everything. Climate is not a niche issue. Climate is about everything else. I think you're also going to see exciting moments where we discuss who is doing what to make sure we're moving from talking about advancing girls and women to engaging with it, and engaging with that as part of what should be a reality around the world. And I think you're going to see some of those themes come forward. I'm always excited to see what happens with the media and the discussion about the future of media, because media is not an afterthought in our society. Media is part of what we do. It's a part of how we engage and the things that we do, and it's right next to us. It's right next to you. It's right next to probably every single person, well, I know for sure, watching the Facebook Live.
Right.
But the future of technology and media, and how we interact with media, and how we get our news, and what we do with it. So those would be the things that I'd watch at the Social Good Summit. Check out the lineup online right now. It's at socialgoodsummit.com. Get your tickets, join the Thunderclap, and watch the live stream.
Perfect. And I'm just going to ask you one more question from our audience, and then I think we're going to just go ahead and move to closing out. But somebody was asking about they'd be interested in seeing youth ambassadors of the SDGs in their communities through a training done by the UN in partnership with governments. So would it be possible to have something like that, or it does something similar to that exist? And thank you, Mosab, for that question.
So great, a key question, and wow, are you ever on it? Because I think just this week, the United Nations, under the Office of the Special Envoy, there's a Special Envoy for Youth at the UN, is going to be announcing advocates and ambassadors for this issue, which is very exciting because there's people who engage with young people. Beyond that, you're going to see that it's part of everything that happens during UN General Assembly Week. The organization that many people know about, the United Nations Association, has a community as part of it that's called Gen UN. This idea about Generation UN and what they care about, etc. There are already tools available online for people to learn more about how they can support these issues and be a part of them. I think you're going to be seeing those people go to the United Nations, whether it's through the U.S. Youth Observer to the United Nations, who will be part of those meetings. Follow her, she's super cool.
She's amazing.
In fact, I think up through Global Moms Challenge, we even have her handle available, and if not, we should definitely post it. I'm learning so much just from following her, and I love her, the way that she attacks issues and helps share them with people. I think she's a good role model in that. But you could also follow any of the youth voices that are going to be there, because they are social entrepreneurs and they want to find solutions. There will be students with us through the UN Foundation at the UN General Assembly Week, and we're hoping that student groups are going to be opening up the live stream to watch and having meetups around the world. In hundreds of places around the world, people are going to take the live stream content that they see and have discussions about it. We need that, and we need that. That's part of that training that was asked in the question, but we also need the reaction. How did young people react? Because we can transmit that, all of us can transmit that back to leaders. Let me tell you a quick story. I will never forget being in a social good summit in the sidelines in this little area where we have a side room where the media was doing some interviews. And we got a call. We found out that a foreign minister from a country was going to join us. Surprise! That's great news. Foreign minister comes in, listens to what's happening on the stage, and was watching the reactions that were taking place online, and was going to a meeting and said, you know what, I'm going to quote this person. How do I do this? And was getting some feedback from our friends at Mashable and others. It's a small example, but it's an important example about how social listening brought him a perspective that opened his mind on something that he took to a meeting.
Right.
And that's action in real time. It doesn't always happen that way, but then the themes do permeate. And we're going to be opening up that week when Global Goals Week opens, and when you see the Social Good Summit happen on the 18th, let's make sure that everyone is paying attention for that whole week so that they're able to see all of the solutions that are available, all of the attention that's there, and all the energy that's there. We're not going to get there by being pessimistic about the future. We're going to be there. We're going to get there by taking action and being optimistic about what's possible. That's the only way we're going to get to a 2030 we all want.
And it's amazing to be in a room with all of the thought leaders all in one spot, kind of, thinking about these broader issues together. And I think that the meetups is a really good way for people who aren't able to make it to New York. They can just host their own meetup within their homes, and then talk about some of those global issues just there within their own local communities or within their families. And so
and tell us about it, because we'll shout out to you, and we want to hear from you. Sometimes it happens from the stage, sometimes it happens on the feed. We want to hear what you're listening to. We want to feed into it. So if it's at your school or your community or in your living, host a meetup.
Absolutely.
Let's do it.
Or even as the Global Moms community, they could just reach out to us, send us your feedback, and we'll be happy to distribute that information as well. So my last question for you is that you're a dad of 4,
Mm-hmm.
and we're talking a lot about youth and how they can get involved. So my big question for you is, what kind of a world do you want for your kids by 2030? What inspires you?
That's the key question. So I'm going to answer because they've answered it for me. That's not the world I want. Let me tell you what they want. They want options. And they want options to do the right thing, and they want the freedom to know that they haven't been painted into a corner. That's the world I want in 2030. I don't want to have made decisions or punted decisions so far down the path where they don't feel like they've got options in how they can live their life, in how they can have a healthy family, in what they can do in the society and where they live, and the type of city they can live in, or the type of place where they can be, they should be able to eat foods that they want to eat, not because climate change has made it impossible. They should be able to live in a city because they want to live in a city, not because they have to, because they've been moved into it or the infrastructure doesn't allow for it. So options are important, because I believe we're here on Earth to make good decisions. We're free to choose what we do, and let's make sure that we're making decisions that give people freedom to do that. That's the kind of world I want for them. My daughter has also told me, my children will also tell me the kind of world that they want to live with. My son wants to live in a world where transport is very modern. My daughter has told me she wants to live in a world where we're not talking about gender equality as much and we're just experiencing it.
That's a huge one.
It's a huge one. So we've got to talk about it. We've got to be aware of it. We can't ever let our guard down on that, but she wants to be in a place where instead of clamoring for it, we're experiencing it and the benefits of what that brings when everyone is counted, when everyone has a seat at the table. So I've answered your question by answering it for them, and they're loud, so you'll hear them clamoring it for them as well in society, but it's an honor to be able to talk to you as part of this group. We love the Global Moms community. They challenge us in the right way, and we hope to continue to be challenged with that spirit of collaboration and partnership.
Well, Erin, it's been wonderful talking to you, and you painted a beautiful picture of the world that we want to be able to see in 2030. And we're going to pose that question back to you, to the folks back at home. What kind of a world do you want for your family by the year 2030? Let us know in the comments below, and feel free to join us at Social Good Summit in New York, or you can take a look at our website at it's mashable.com/SGS. Thank you so much. Have a great week.